And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Eastman School of Music in Howard Hanson Hall. I want to welcome our visitors who are live here in the hall and those of you who are watching us on Zoom. I'm Galen McCormick and I'm the program manager for Eastman Performing Arts Medicine. And this is a new series that we started called Wellness at Eastman, all about helping artists to take charge of their health and have long, healthy careers. So this evening, we have two wonderful physical therapists, the dynamic duo. We have Sarah Carlton right here, Sue Callan-Harris. They serve the Eastman community. They serve the whole Rochester community, but they both specialize in physical therapy for performing artists. I'm really excited to learn from both of you tonight and to do these stretches along with you. So I'm going to get out of the way and let you get started.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this, Galen. And also, this young woman to my left is Maddie Tavares, and she is a doctor of physical therapy student intern working with us. So let's get started on warm up and cool down strategies. So if you can take a look at this screen, we're going to figure out 3 times during the presentation where we're at, okay? And if you are somewhere between 4 and 7, you're at ease, you're focused, you're attentive, you're feeling calm, relaxed, present, then you're in a good place for getting started with a practice session or a presentation. If you're coming in somewhere between 1 and 3, you're feeling a little tired or a little low-key, you might need to pep yourself up a little bit. If you're somewhere between 8 and 10, which is where I like to hang out, you're already hyper-vigilant, scanning the room, maybe a little edgy, and you might want to do something to actually bring yourself into that calm, focused state for practice. So that's where these ideas of warming up and cooling down come in. The benefits of warm up, you may already know this, but let's all get on the same page with them. It increases your blood flow, your circulation. Circulation anywhere is good for circulation everywhere, including your brain. Increasing your tissue extensibility. So when we say tissue, we mean muscle tissue, we mean ligaments, we mean tendons, we mean cartilage, we mean all the tissues in your body that we're talking about. It prepares your body for activity, your heart rate, your breathing, your nerve impulses, your hormones, your endorphins, and your body temperature. Sometimes people get really cold before they're about to perform. Sometimes people get really warm or overheated. Either one of those situations doesn't make you feel good about what's coming next. It prepares your mind through the process cues. So even doing a warm-up is a form of a process cue for what's about to happen next. It gets you ready for the next thing that you're going to do. It promotes one of my favorites, ideal posture and ideal muscle tone. So you can be too low in your tone, you can be too high in your tone, and you want to continually prepare yourself for what you think is ideal for playing, okay? And then it decreases your susceptibility to injury. Why? Because it lets you know where you're starting, what areas of your body you need to pay more attention to, what's too tense, what's too lax. Okay, the warm-up tips. You want to do this about 15 minutes before your practice or your performance. If you don't have 15 minutes before your practice or performance, you're going to adjust it. You want to do full body movements followed by specific muscle groups. So your whole body first, big giant muscle groups first, followed by the smaller, more specific muscle groups that you start to identify as needing a little more TLC. You want to use what we call dynamic stretching, and we're going to talk about this a few times today. So dynamic stretching refers to that process where you keep moving all the way through. You don't hold it at any one point in time. Many people, dancers, musicians, many of us were taught to hold the stretch for 20 or 30 or 40 or sometimes 60 seconds. And what we found is the static stretching actually inhibits your muscle function for a little while. So you don't want to do a static stretch right before you want to use that muscle. You want to pick movements that address your particular areas of tension. So Sarah and I are going to give you a lot of different movements to choose from, and you can feel free to create your own warm-up or cool down routine according to what you need and according to what you need that particular day. You want to set warm-ups and cool downs ideally to music of your choice. We don't have music here, but the music acts as a particular cue that goes beyond the language center and reminds your body of what it's supposed to do next. So anybody who's taken dance classes know what it's like when the music starts and you automatically let go of everything else that you were thinking and your body knows what to do next. This is the same thing for musicians. So pick the music of your choice, not the music of my choice, but have it go along with whether you need to get energized or whether you need to calm down. And then choose the length of the music according to your situation. If you only have 3 minutes to warm up, pick a 3-minute song. If you only have 3 minutes to cool down, have something ready that only takes about 3 minutes, okay? Okay, the warm-up exercises, we're going to go through these afterwards, but in general, the principles, diaphragmatic breathing. And I know I'm preaching to the choir because you all know where your respiratory diaphragm is, but there are 2 diaphragms that you want to take into consideration when you're breathing. The respiratory diaphragm, which lives right underneath your rib cage, and the pelvic floor diaphragm, which lives in the bowl of your pelvis. Both of those are important to take into consideration when you're breathing. Again, we want to focus on the dynamic stretching versus static stretching. You want to incorporate movements that are considered fascial releases. This is not base release, this is the fascia. So the fascia is connective tissue that covers your whole body, all of your muscles, all of your organs. It's like your Spidey suit. And if you get a snag anywhere in your fascia, it can affect the functioning of that whole arm or leg or whatever. You can also get trigger points in the fascia. So we want to take into consideration the fascial release as well as the muscles. We want muscle activation in your whole body, and we want it to be multi-directional. Now, a couple of fun facts. Largest muscle in the body?
Gluteus maximus.
Gluteus maximus. So when your gluteus maximus, which is your muscle in the back of your hips, is not functioning well, you're going to have difficulty stabilizing your core. Recently, coming off a year of a lot of remote learning, we have been dealing with people who have gluteal amnesia, also known as dead butt syndrome. It's a serious condition. And when you're doing your warm-ups, even though you don't think you're using your gluteus maximus for playing your tuba, you are, and you need it. Smallest muscle in your body that we're also going to be warming up. The stapedius muscle. So very important muscle for musicians to know about and to be aware of, because there are times when you actually have to activate that in order to prevent a noise overload, okay? Longest muscle in your body?
Sartorius.
Your sartorius muscle. And the widest muscle in your body?
Latissimus dorsi.
Your latissimus dorsi, which starts at the base of your pelvis and comes all the way up and attaches on your inner arm. Just a few fun facts, all important. The benefits of the cool down. Number 1, restores your heart rate, your breathing, and your muscle tension. So you might have built up some tension in specific muscles while you're practicing and performing. We need to restore that muscle tension to its base. It disperses the fluid buildup from using certain muscle groups. You all will notice if you exercise heavily one day, the next day your thighs feel swollen or something like that. It's natural when you use a muscle for there to be increased inflammatory response, healthy in that muscle group, but we need to decrease that fluid buildup in order for the muscles to recover fully. Otherwise, you continue to feel spasm or cramping in the muscle group. And then it resets your nervous system for what we call procedural memory consolidation. So when you do your cool down, you are telling your brain that that practice session is over and it's okay to go in to do the house cleaning to clear out anything that doesn't belong in your memory. So that the next time you go back to practice, your nervous system remembers the good stuff and gets rid of the other stuff. If you don't cool down, or if you don't take some time to stop that, then the memory keeps going and everything else that happens afterwards becomes part of that practice session. So procedural memory consolidation, I think, is one of the most important parts of the cool down. Cool down tips. We used to say static stretching when you cool down. We no longer say that, and we'll explain that. Slow down your movements. So go twice or 3 times as slowly as you think you can. Pretend you're a slow loris. And do gentle, I emphasize gentle, elongation poses. So most of us have our elbows bent most of the day doing what we need to do. When you're going to elongate and stretch, you want gentle, slow elongation poses. Okay. The cool down exercises, we'll go over these at the end. We'll include the slow, prolonged stretches, rubbing, clapping, facial relaxation. So this is different from the facial. This is facial relaxation because most people don't realize how much you incorporate your facial muscles, including your tongue, into your practice session, especially if it is something that is challenging for you. If it's a new piece or a difficult piece, or you're tired or something like that, we forget how much our face is incorporated into that session. And if we are still walking around with a scowl or something like that, that affects your nervous system. We all know that when you smile, that has an effect on our nervous system. And when you frown, that also has an effect. We want to do the deep breathing with the expulsion of air. We want to get equal and opposite muscle activation. Actually, we talk about this in terms more like Tai Chi terms. It's expulsion of the chi. So we're changing the energy in our cool down. Okay. So there is sensory facilitation that occurs with any good warm-up. And the 3 primary adjustments that you want to make to the sensory information that's coming in to your nervous system are through your body, through your breath, and through this ability of finding your center, which seems a little nebulous, but I think people understand what that means. There is a sensation of where your center is. Usually it's the dantian. So usually it's somewhere here in the core and you want to feel grounded. Over those guys. The body adjustments are somatic or bodily or autonomic nervous system adjustments that will then inform and influence your central nervous system, so your brain. So we take sensory information in, and then that influences the motor information that's going out. The body adjustments that we're talking about will alter your sensation, your blood flow, your oxygen saturation, your pH levels, your muscle tension, and your lymphatic system, helping to detoxify your lymphatics, which means that you're eliminating things like lactic acid or histamines, or those agents that we consider to be toxic. And then it bends your stress hormones. We all know about adrenaline overload or cortisol overload or metabolic acids, and it mobilizes the beneficial neurotransmitters. So endorphins, serotonins, the feel-good transmitters, and the dopamine. So there is now another option to screen time for getting your dopamine fix. And then these are considered simple body adjustments. So shaking, so Sarah can demonstrate shaking. It can be shaking anything, your head, your feet. I always think of Bette Midler when she used to warm up to perform. Tapping. So tapping is bilateral, and you find points to tap on your collarbone, on your sternum, on your temples, above your upper lip, gently, 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 or your ears. Sometimes people will tap and hum at the same time. And then self-massage. So this is altering your body sensation. People do it automatically. I do. Like when I'm getting ready to do a hands-on, I'll massage my fingers, just like check in with the tension, or massage your arms, gentle self-massage, or those upper trapezius muscles,
Pesky upper traps.
the pesky upper traps. Okay, and the next one. Then we have the breath adjustment. Breathing is both automatic and voluntary. So you're breathing automatically, but you can adjust your breathing. It generates energy. It improves your heart function or cardiac function. It improves the detoxification of the lymph system. So it speeds up the removal of lactic acid or the removal of the histamines. It stimulates your central nervous system adaptations in the hypothalamus. So if you recall, the hypothalamus is responsible for temperature regulation, for your appetite or your sense of appetite, for some of those autonomic functions. The baroreceptors, so baroreceptors, pressure, think pressure. So it tells your nervous system how much pressure is in different joints throughout your body. Is there a lot? Is there a little? Where do we need more? And your chemoreceptors. So those are the things that are receptive to, again, the neurotransmitters. So the breath adjustments. And then the breath adjustments could be either to increase your energy or calm yourself down. So let's say you're a little bit hyper, you just run, you think you might be late, and you want to calm yourself down for your practice session because you want everything to be just right. So that's what your body remembers. So the breath adjustments would look like Sarah will demonstrate. 3 audible sighs. I hope you could hear that. So she's breathing in through her nose and out through her mouth. And now she's demonstrating the diaphragmatic breathing. She has one hand on her chest, one hand on her belly, and she's forcibly making her belly rise as she inhales and come in as she exhales, and feeling her chest expand. We put in here to monitor for signs of dizziness. Start slowly with your breathing adjustments. Now, what if you are feeling a little fatigued and you need to get a little energy in? These are breathing techniques that we borrowed from a lot of martial arts, my favorite, Tai Chi. So it's the idea of taking 2 quick inhales through your nose and then exhale through pursed lips quickly. So it's in some disciplines, they'll incorporate a little bit of movement with the arm swing. So it's a nice breathing adjustments, okay? And then the getting centered, the process of getting centered. Many people have talked about centering techniques. So some are very famous, some you may already be using. So we're just going to talk about the principles of centering techniques. Your neuromotor reflexes are very much driven by your gaze, okay? So we know that if we're anxious, our gaze tends to wander and we tend to look up and to the right. So anytime you're like a little vigilant, your gaze will look up and to the right, or it'll just keep scanning the room. The body doesn't know the difference between real or imagined imagery. So this is good news, because if you are imagining exactly what you want to hear or see or feel, your body will go along with what your brain is seeing, not necessarily what else is happening out in the real world. So your imagery may be very different from somebody else's, but you want to be in the position of directing your imagery when you get started. We know that witnessing a non-judgmental perspective is associated with higher medial prefrontal cortex function. So what does that mean? It simply means you want to think about the music the way you want to be, the way you want to hear it, the way you want to sense it. You want to think about the music here, have that in your mind, rather than worrying about your own personal performance. So if you're thinking about, my hands aren't in the right place, I'm going too fast, I'm not sitting up straight or something like that, that's what your body's going to respond to. But if you are able to think about the music the way you want to get it from here out to there, that's what your body is going to cooperate with. That's the principle of getting the subject. Okay. Now, we have a couple of different types of vision that we want to talk about. There's inside vision, inner vision, and outer vision. So the inside vision is you knowing where your body is. So are your feet on the floor? If you're sitting, is your butt sitting stable in the chair? Are your shoulder blades back and down, or are they up near your ears? So there's an inner vision about where you are. If you're talking about outer vision, you have a focus on something on the outside. So you would look around the room and you would name the clock, or you would name the chair, or something that you're seeing, so that you are aware of your environment. And then you adjust your gaze accordingly. Most of the time, we recommend that you adjust your gaze to the horizon, whatever the horizon is for you, the space between the floor and the wall. If you're in a theater situation, you might have to gaze over the first 5 or 6 rows to find the place where your gaze would be resting at what you would call your natural horizon. Just be careful that your chin is neither too high or too low. Then you have the ability to visualize, clearly imagine the place or the experience that makes you feel ready. That's inner visualization. And then assess your starting point. So again, this is another assessment of our starting point. Where are we now? Are we somewhere between 1 and 3? Are we between 4 and 7? Are we between 8 and 10? Are you starting to feel calm after doing the breathing? Are you starting to feel focused? Are you starting to feel present? Okay. Okay, good. We want to talk a little bit about considerations in hypermobility, because many musicians find that this is a condition they deal with.
Yeah, so something that as physical therapists we have seen, and something that has been brought to us by our patients as being an issue for them. There's multiple types of hypermobility. There are some people who are just hypermobility in a couple of joints. We see a lot of specifically finger hypermobility in musicians. There's also something called generalized hypermobility, and that's where all of your joints are too mobile. So hypermobility is basically where the joints are more flexible than what is considered normal. So when you're moving around, it's really hard to control the movement of those joints with your muscle system. Okay, there's one way specifically that we like to test for this, and it's called the Baton scale. So we look at specific joints in the body to see if they're more mobile than we think they should be. So the first one that we like to look at is the elbows. So if you want to try this at home, you're going to look at your elbows. If your elbows go past what's considered neutral, then you could be considered to have hypermobile elbows. The Baton scale is a 9-point scale, so each body part is considered 1 point. Okay. The next one we want to look at is our knees. If our knees like to go behind what's considered a neutral alignment, then you can consider those hypermobile. Okay. If you bring your hands up and you're able to place them flat on the floor without bending your knees, that's the next test. Okay. And the last one involves the hands. So you want to think about, can you bring your thumb all the way down so that it touches your arm? Okay. And you would do that on both sides, because like you notice on me, one of them is really hypermobile and the other one is not quite as much. Okay. And the last one is your pinkies. If you can pull your pinky back 90 degrees or more from your palm, that's considered hypermobile. Okay. So that's how we test for generalized hypermobility. I'm going to have you, there you go. So it's really important, if you have any type of hypermobility, to pay close attention to your warm up and cool down. There are some things that you should consider that might be different than how some of your peers need to warm up or cool down. Okay. So the first thing that I like to tell people is that you need to get your body stable before you can get it moving. right? If we're moving around on joints that are too loose, we don't have that muscle activation, that's putting us at risk of greater injury. So the most important place that I like to tell people to get stable is around their joints, specifically around their core. So we want to actually set our rib cage. That means from front to back, making sure we're not sticking it out and arching our back. That also means from side to side. So we want to actually just feel like our rib cage is kind of pulling down and in slightly so that we can set all of those muscles, get our alignment lined up over our pelvis, nice and neutral, which allows our head to be in line. It allows our arms to be aligned. We also want to consider our shoulder blades. If our shoulder blades aren't nice and stable on our rib cage, that puts our shoulders at greater risk of injury. We may not have the mobility we need to do what we need to do. And the last one is the core.
In the warm up, like as we go through it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So the other one is the core, making sure that core is nice and stable and active. Okay. We want to always focus on gentle dynamic stretching versus static, something we've already kind of talked about and we'll do more of. We want to also incorporate cardio into our exercise. Just getting that blood flow and oxygen to the muscles will help kind of get you warmed up. You can use massage, you can use tapping. For cool down, again, always dynamic stretching versus static. And the last important thing is you want to make sure you're getting a good strength and stability program. We always want to consider the core and the big muscles around our joints as the most important ones to stabilize. We like to suggest not doing big heavy weightlifting with weight at the end of your limbs, puts more stress on your joints, and instead do more body weight training.
So we're going to actually practice these now.
Yep.
Okay. We're going to go through a sample warm up. We're not going to do all the different types of, we're not going to do all the repetitions because we'll run out of time. So we want to show you those. So if you start with your warm up, we're going to start with big muscles, deep breathing in, expanding your belly, breathing out, pulling your belly back and in. And then we'll go to, again, large movements. These are called standing pelvic clocks, where Sarah is swinging her hips as far around as possible. You can add a little bit of attitude to it if you want to, and she makes those faster and faster, which means that those circles will get smaller and smaller, and then she can reverse. At the end of that, you should actually feel a very stable core. Then the next one is called arm swing. So stand away from this. Yeah. So she's swinging her arms, and this is a fascial release as well. She's letting them fly from her shoulders, a little bit of bend in her knees, and breathing. Good. Then we have what we call triplanar warm-up. So we're actually mobilizing our thoracic spine, arms overhead as she steps forward, underneath as she steps back. And you can do that on each side, about 8 repetitions on each side. And then she'll start flexing side to side. Arms will go to one side as her hips go to the other side. And you can see that her thoracic spine is moving with it, bending side to side. And then she'll start some twisting motions. So her arms fly behind her, opposite of the way her pelvis goes.
And also add her foot.
Yes, Sarah's a dancer and she doesn't mind bringing her foot in. We like to have the foot drive it. You don't have to look pretty when you're doing this. The more you fall off center, the more your center gets cued to bring you back in. So if you fall a little bit, that's a good thing. Shoulder rolls, elbow rolls, and hand rolls. So moving your shoulder blades up, back, and down, and then starting to roll your elbows from your sides, and then moving your hands from the wrists. So everything can be incorporated into the same motion. Then we have loosening up your neck. We call this snake neck. So she's going to stand, lead with her head, and let her body follow. Followed by seaweed, where she leads with her trunk, and her arms will just fly out to her sides naturally. And then her body follows her trunk. Then we're going to do polishing the halo. So you take your hands, stretch them forward, put them overhead, and create a big circle. The bigger the circle, the brighter the halo. Maybe. Then there's such a thing, we call it hand flapping. This is a fascial release. So she's actually leading from her elbows and letting her hands go along for the ride. Sometimes her hands will face down, sometimes they'll face towards her, sometimes they'll face away from her like salt and pepper. Then she'll clasp her fingers together and actually wring her hands. And then she'll perform some finger bounces. And then what we call dynamic finger flexion and extension, which are also called jazz hands, tendon glides. And then the web space massage. So taking one web space and circle all the way up your arm, because your arm gets bigger as it goes up, and you'll get a nice space between the web space.
You can also do this on your legs.
Yep.
Get a little bit more stretch through those fingers.
So you're all warmed up and you just had a great practice, and now you're going to cool down. So we're going to start with what we call yoga arms, which is where you take a big deep breath in, arms come up, back and down. Remember, the cool down is slow. Up and then turn and press down to one side. Up, down, up, turn, press down to the other side. Then we come back to elbow and wrist circles, but these are going to be slow. And we actually choreographed this to that famous Spanish guitar piece, Romance de Amor, and it really looks really beautiful, like flamenco dance, when you have the music in the background. Notice how Sarah has slowed down the movements. They're fluid. She's getting a stretch. She's getting elongation, and she never stops. Then there's a scalene upper trap stretch where you actually hold your sternum down and you do gentle neck rolls. Slowly stay with any position that you feel needs a little extra love. The rhomboid stretch, if you're sitting, you can cross your arms and stretch down, letting your head go, or you can send your hands down the inside of your legs, squeeze your arms a little bit with your knees and pull your back away from it. So you get a big stretch in the middle of your upper back.
This is a good modification to make if you are hypermobile or if you have shoulder injuries or issues. Crossing the arms can be a little bit straining on the shoulder, which should look like that.
And then we'll go into some nerve gliding, which is also a pectoral stretch. So she spreads her fingers apart, takes them behind her as far as they can go, and tilts her head from side to side gently. And then she turns her hands down, thumbs in, and does the same thing. And hand rubbing and your facial massage. So this is your face that you're going to massage. Your forehead, your temples, your cheeks, your chin, maybe pulling right down to your neck. Be careful of your glasses. Good. Then rolling down through your spine, one vertebrae at a time. Let your arms swing side to side. Let your knees be soft and gentle. And then roll back up through your spine, one vertebrae at a time. Clapping, which is literally clapping. And then rubbing. And my favorite, expelling the chi. Make sure you come up on tiptoes, breathe in, and big deep breath out. Breathe in, up on tiptoes, and again, breathe in. One of the things that we like to say when you're all finished is to imagine equal and opposite movements to what you've just been doing. So you could imagine you're playing your instrument behind you. So if you were playing your organ in front of you, what would it be like if you played it behind you? If you were playing your guitar in front of you, what would it be like if you went equal and opposite? You can get creative with this. Okay. And I think, well, we'll just go to the very last slide. If we can pull it up. Where are you now after your warm up and cool down? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has really been very enjoyable. I know for myself, just watching you do it and doing a little bit of those with you, I actually feel even better. And I felt pretty good when I came in. I'm really looking forward to this. I think to honor our time, we're not going to go into Q&A tonight. I'm really sorry, but it's easy to reach our two practitioners here through the email on our website. I want to thank all of you who came here tonight. Thank you for joining us on Zoom. Our next event is going to be on November 3rd, and we're going to explore what is the arts and health field. I want to thank the leadership team for Eastman Performing Arts Medicine. That's Dr. Mark Taubman at the University of Rochester Medical Center, Jamal Rossi here at the Eastman School of Music, and Dr. Mike Rotundo, who's part of the University of Rochester Medical Faculty Group. Thank you so much to TMP for helping us to support this, and of course to the Eastman School for hosting this in the first place. Take good care, everyone, and I'll see you in November. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Terrific job.
Thanks, Mary.